Hey everybody on YouTube. Today I thought I'd take another moment to do another VCR vintage video repair job. As you know, this right in front of you is a 3/4 U-Matic VCR. This is a broadcast video unit used by many of the TV stations in the early 70s to mid 80s. This is the Sony model VP-5000. Okay, today I'm going to show you, basically walk you through a repair on the older units such as this, because of the fact they suffer from the same problems that VCRs do for the consumer VCRs, where you have loading and playback and rewind problems. It's the same purpose, but just in a bigger broadcast, more mechanical type of thing. So I'm going to show you some of the troubleshooting for fixing the 3/4 U-Matic machines and what you're going to need and that type of thing. So let's take a look at this machine. Okay, well, first of all, let me just show you the machine and the steps you got to take. Alright, if you look down here, you'll see this is very similar to any VCR that you would look at, but it's a little bit different, so you need to know what you're doing, but I'm going to just show you step by step what you need to do. Okay, now if you look up here, first of all, you got to remove the loading carriage, which is the same purpose as the VCRs, Betamax machines, you name it. Anything that's got a tape or takes a tape has what's called a loading carriage. And here you got one right here. And as you can see, it's got a lot of gears, and it also has a plug in the back. Okay, so what you want to do is remove the top screws. There's one screw to the far right, which is right here. When you unscrew it, there's a little bar that comes across like this. See this bar? And it clips into springs. And you just unscrew the right side and lift it up and take the bar out, and the whole carriage will come straight out of the machine, okay? But it's only one screw and it's on this side. Alright, now this loading carriage has a connection wire that you have to unplug on the right side, okay? And if you flip it around, you'll notice there's nothing on this side, but you'll notice if I flip it downwards, like so, this particular loading carriage takes a belt. So you got to keep in mind you need to change the belt also on this loading carriage, because this machine has several belts, and I'm going to walk you through that. But as you can see, this has a belt, so keep in mind that also has to be changed. Okay, let's take a look at the upper bodice of the machine to start off with. Okay, as you can see, I'm basically showing you after the carriage is removed, and you can see this is kind of a big machine, but it's a very simple process, very simple as far as repair. It's no different than a Betamax or a VCR or anything like that. This is just a broadcast television video deck, so there's no difference in repairing these machines. Okay, this particular unit works on the same process as a VCR. You got your rewind spindle, your play and fast forward spindle, you've got your clutch wheel, which is right here, okay? But this has also a counter belt. It's for your actual counter in the front of the machine, right here. Alright. These two belts join each other and connects to this spindle, so the actual counter works. You can actually change these if you want to, but you don't have to if you don't have them. But it's just for the actual counter on the front of the machine, and those counters are kind of hokey anyway, so I wouldn't really worry about it if you don't have those belts. But as you look in here, you'll see it's got the same principle of a Betamax machine. This sucks the tape in this way when it loads, okay? And then it loads the machine, and then basically it's sort of set up the same way a Betamax machine loads up, but it's just on a loading ring. You see this loading ring that goes all the way around? Okay. First of all, you want to make sure everything is clean. Make sure your video drums are clean. Your video heads are clean. Make sure your audio control head, which is to the right here, is clean. Make sure your Capistan motor shaft on this side is clean. Okay? And then you want to make sure that you got a brand new Capistan roller. See this roller right here? These are usually really bad, so you want to change these if you can find them. They are kind of hard to find, but you do need to change these on these older machines because they do cause a lot of problems. If you stick any tapes in here that's very valuable, that's very vintage, and you think you're going to get a transfer, and all of a sudden this machine starts eating it, don't forget I warned you. You got to make sure all the rubber is changed on these machines. Alright, then you want to make sure that, alright, these have screws in them. you remove the screws on these spindles. These will lift straight out, okay? So you want to make sure you re-oil these, okay? These are on shafts. They must be re-oiled. They got little bearings on the bottom. So you must unscrew these, lift them straight out. Lift them straight out. And you got to oil the shafts, all right? Then you replace them and slide them back in. You want to make sure your band is in good shape and it's not pulling away from the brass little fitting. You want to make sure it's glued in place and it stays there and it doesn't move. This is what keeps the tension on your spools. You want to make sure that this tension band is in good shape. Alright, then at last you got to do the major thing to this machine, which is the clutch tire. See here? This is a little clutch tire on a spindle. You got to make sure you put a new clutch tire on there. It's very imperative that you change the clutch tires out on these 3/4 U-Matic machines. They are always cracked and slipping and very bad, and 3/4 tapes are hard enough to pull through the machine if you don't have a good enough clutch tire to make sure it plays properly. So make sure you change out the clutch tires. Alright? Then you want to check for any little problems. You want to make sure that all these pins are clean. You want to make sure everything loads properly. Now you're going to see over here is a loading motor. See this? This also takes a belt. So you got to remove that loading motor and change that belt and put a new belt in it. Alright? That's called your loading ring motor. And those do take belts and they do need to be changed out. So you want to look at that and do that right away. Alright? So let's, basically that's pretty much it for the top part of it. If you keep it clean, you re-oil your spindles, change your clutch tire, change your belts, clean everything, and just look for any problems, like especially these felt bands. The felt pads on these machines are always a real problem. You want to make sure the felt bands are correct, that they're loose and they're in the right position and they are grabbing properly and play and rewind. They keep the tension on the spools as the tape is threaded through the machine. So that's a big issue. Got to make sure these felt pads and bands are working properly. Alright, let's take a look at the bottom of the machine. Okay, well here's the bottom of the 3/4 machine. Now as you can see, this is really kind of complicated, so I want to walk this through this with you so you can get an idea what you need to do. This is a very simple machine, so there isn't a whole heck of a lot on the bottom you need to do. Okay, here is your video head Capistan motor drive right here. As you notice, there's no belts that normally would cross from this point to this point. This is sort of redesigned differently in this early model. So it has its own motor driven video head and it has its own motor driven Capistan motor. Alright, each one of them is individual. Usually there's a belt that would cross these two, but this is an older machine and it doesn't have them. But if you go all the way up here, you will notice for the clutch tire to go and fast forward and rewind, there is a belt on the very bottom. This belt right here that controls the fast forward and rewind on the bottom must be changed out. I can feel it. This belt's already cracked and dried out. You definitely need to change this belt out. But this controls the rewind, fast forward on the machine. It's your clutch tire belt. So you do need to change that. Now, when you open up the machine, you'll notice that this board, well, this is actually your systems board on the very bottom, actually flips up on a hinge. See how that's on a hinge? Okay? When you take the two screws out, you will notice it's up on a hinge. Your clutch tire is right there. Clutch belt is right there. It's very easy to change this, so make sure to change this one out. Alright? And you want to make sure everything is clean and there ain't nothing that fell in the machine that would cause anything to lock up when you're trying to play. Because sometimes people drop screws, they drop all kinds of junk, and these machines get caught up and they don't want to spin properly. So make sure everything spins properly with the motors, which is all good, as you can see. Alright? And that's all you really need to do on the bottom. You got one belt on this particular machine. So let's take a look at what else you need to do. Okay, well as you can see, I removed the actual spindles, your rewind and your fast forward. The reason I did this, I wanted to point out something else. When you're changing this clutch tire, as you can see, if you got the spindles out, it's very easy to get it off. Also, there's a little hex screw that you need, like a little Allen wrench to unscrew this off of this little brass fitting, and the whole clutch tire will come out. But if you can't do that, you can actually pull the tire off of that plastic fitting and put a new tire on it. So you don't necessarily have to remove the plastic, just change the tire out. In most cases, people have a problem because, you know, either they don't have the tire, or if they have the whole new replacement, they want to change the whole thing. You don't necessarily have to do that. All you need to do is get that tire off and put a new tire on it and make sure that it's changed out and you're good to go. Another thing I wanted to point out, these are sensors. These are actually fast forward, rewind, and play sensors. See these black jobbers? All right, you want to make sure those are clean. So you want to take a Q-tip in between the middle of those and clean them with a Q-tip. All right, get all the debris off of those, because those actually sense the spindles and play, fast forward, and record. So if there's any issues with tension and various things, the machine will actually stop because of these sensors. So you want to make sure you take a Q-tip inside the middle of those sensors and you clean them right down the center of those sensors, okay? All right, then you want to double check something else. This is also a very big issue. These are tension pads. See these little pads right here? This is what actually stops the spool. You want to examine those and make sure they're not wore out. If they're wore out, you need to change them. All right, and these are not easy to find. Sometimes you could just glue brand new cork material on these and you'd be good to go. But you need to change these out if they're really wore out, or the spindle is going to keep spinning and play and forward and all that kind of stuff, and it's going to start eating your tapes. So you got to make sure these are working okay and clean. If not, replace them, do something, but do not leave them if they are wore out. This is one of the biggest causes for tape slack on 3/4 U-Matic machines, where the tape will actually start getting eaten in the machine. It's because there's not enough tension with the tension pad in the stop and play position. So make sure these are checked. Make sure your sensors are clean. Make sure you oil and lube your pins before you put your spindles back on. You're probably wondering what kind of oil or lube to use. Basically, all you need is a 3-in-1 oil like this. All right. Put a couple drops on each pin and you should be ready to go. You could use grease, but you'd have to use a very fine amount of grease, but I prefer using the 3-in-1 oil. It works a lot better. Okay? And of course, to the right, this is your little plug for you have to plug into your carriage when you put your carriage back in place. All right, so you want to make sure your video heads are clean. You want to make sure all your guides are really clean. Make sure your audio control head's clean. Make sure your Capistan motor control motor pin is clean. The controls dragging, this actually controls the drag of the tape in the machine. You want to make sure that's really clean, and you want to make sure that you change the Capistan roller, because these get really bad and slick and they don't want to grab the tape, and this machine will start eating your tape. So you got to make sure that that's changed out. So basically what you want to do is make sure all the rubber's changed out, and if you have to take it out of the machine to do it, you got to do it. This is going to be your biggest problem. This is your loading motor. Getting that out and changing the belt is no easy task. That's a little bit of work, but you do have to change that, because if you don't, it's not going to load the tape in the machine properly. All right? So now, basically, it's pretty much a simple little VCR or broadcast VCR to actually fix. It's very simple. If you got the parts and you know what you're doing, you could turn this into a perfect working machine like brand new. So let me show you some of the materials you're going to need, and I think we'll be about done. Okay, when it comes down to parts, boy, you better have a lot of parts if you want to get into fixing videotape machines. I am telling you, the biggest problem with today in videotape machines is the rubber parts, the belts, the guides, the clutch tires, you name it. This stuff is really getting harder and harder to find, and especially when you're working on so many different models, sometimes you got to have a lot on hand. So as you can see, I've got thousands of belts, and I truly mean I got coffee cans literally with packs of belts like this. I mean, I literally have got about 10 to 20,000 belts. Easy, ballpark. That's how many belts I have. This is just one coffee can out of about 50 that I have of belts. So yes, I do probably have every belt on the planet for these VCRs. But as you can see, large belts, big belts, small belts, more round belts, okay? And then bags. I got 5 or 6 bags of clutch tires. Look at all these tires. So you do have to have a lot of parts on hand. Clutch tires are very important because you got to have these. This is the main function of the rewind, fast forward, and it's a really big deal. So make sure you have clutch tires. Now you're probably wondering, well, I don't have all those parts. Where do I get them? You go online, you do some serious searching for VCR repair parts. Some people have so much stuff they're trying to get rid of it, you might be able to get lucky enough to buy a lot of this stuff at one time. If you're an electronic tech, video repair tech like I am, and you're into fixing VCRs and you're doing it as a business, or you're doing it as videotape recovery for archives, and you want to fix your own machines, you need to find parts. See all these parts? You got to get this stuff. So all the belts and tires are crucial. You need to find them. All right, now I'm going to talk to you about certain type of things, other little things you might need to actually work on these machines. Okay, well here you go. I laid out a few things, generally what you'll need to fix a 3/4 machine, 1-inch machine, 2-inch quad machines, you name it. Anything that actually runs videotape. This is some of the basic stuff you're really going to need. As you can see, I got a tray here. Now a lot of those, these are hundreds of actual Capistan rollers for VCRs and broadcast VCRs. As you can see, I've got a couple of them in here. These are all brand new. I've got just tons and tons of these. You got to have Capistan rollers and clutch tires and various things. This is my other tray of just the Capistan rollers when I need to find one to change it out. Of course, you're going to need a good multimeter that does capacitors and resistors, anything that it has all the adjustments on it that you actually can check to make sure things are in tolerance, that you don't have any problems with the electrical parts of the machine. Also, you're going to need one of these multimeters to actually test fuses. Sometimes a lot of the fuses on these machines go out, and you need something that gives you tone. And these multimeters give you what's called tone, so you know that the fuses are good. Alright. Then you're going to need what's called a light grease. See this grease right here? It's a very light oiled grease. This is great stuff. You don't want the dark grease, you want this brown stuff. This is a light oiled grease. The brown stuff gets very, very messy and it's very gooky. I do not prefer brown grease. You want to look for a very light oiled grease. This stuff here is very good. You can get it in any automotive store has it. It's a very light oiled grease and it's tan. So look at the color and make sure it's got like a tan color to it. That's the type of grease you're looking for. Then you want to pick up what's called just a light oil. This 3-in-1 oil is great for all the spindles. When you take the spindles off, just a drop of this stuff, and this is all you really need. It's called 3-in-1. You want to look for that too. Then it's imperative. You are badly going to need what's called Gorilla Glue. This is for gluing all the tension pads and stuff like that inside that pull away because the old glue is breaking apart, and you have to re-glue all the actual felt and tension pads together. You need a glue type of substance, and this is the stuff I prefer, Gorilla Glue. This stuff actually makes it happen. Don't use any other glue. You need a very strong glue to glue the actual felt that's on these straps in various pads and tension pads and different things that are breaking away from the glue. You need Gorilla Glue to do it. Alright? Now there you go. That's all the very simple things. And if you follow my directions and you get the basic stuff I'm showing here, and you do the basic repairs with all the belts and doing it like I'm telling you and making sure you get them all changed out and everything is clean, you won't have any problem getting a 3/4 U-Matic broadcast video deck working properly. I hope you enjoyed this video.